So, with anybody who made it to the end of video one, I hope you enjoyed my big old sneeze that I had to let go. So, um, moving on to the faith of Islam. Now that we've all stopped laughing at me. Um, Other beliefs of Islam, or other beliefs o Islam, if you are uh, an Irish Muslim. Just kidding. Muslims believe in a final judgment. We already said that. One important concept is the Ummah. This is the Brotherhood of Islam. Now, originally, that was just to separate the special place for Arab Muslims, those who lived in Arabia, but now it's just referred to as all of Muslims, regardless of where you are, ethnicity, ideology. This concept of Ummah kind of brings them all together and is kind of a sense of solidarity. So to be part of the Ummah, to be part of the brotherhood, that's a big deal. Now, here's a really important issue in regards to Islam: faith and reason. In understanding the Quran, rational thinking is subordinate or below revelation. So if the Quran offers a clear judgment on anything, the Muslim is obliged to follow that judgment. If there's no clear judgment about anything in the Quran, then we can use our rational opinion. But the important thing here is, if you have an opinion and the Quran has an opinion on something, the opinion from the Quran will always supersede your own opinion. So faith will always overcome any kind of rational idea, concept that you have as a Muslim. So that is the whole idea about, remember, the term Islam means to submit, and that's what it means, is to submit your mind. You think you've got a good idea, but you don't if it's contrary to faith. That's different from Christianity, very much different from Christianity. If you or I wanted to have a concept or conversation about, say, women being Roman Catholic priests, we could have that conversation um, and not be um, and we could talk about it and maybe have an opinion, but that and it might be different from what the church stands for, but that doesn't mean that we're heretics or anything. Okay, that's different than Islam. We'll get to more of that in a second. Um, Islam sees faith and deeds as inseparable. They also suggest that no image should be given to Allah or Muhammad. This is disrespectful. Um, Also believe that respect should be given to any of the great prophets, including like Jesus or Moses. All right. So the next, let's talk about the Quran. So Muhammad taught in beautiful poetic language, which he said came directly from Allah. And so you say, like, okay, so the guy wrote it down and said it came from God. Except that this guy couldn't read or write. And when he wrote this all down, basically listening to the words that were given to him by the angel, there's no way. This is the miracle part of the Quran. Is there's no way that Muhammad, with his very very limited, almost um, his inability to read or write, how could he have written with such beautiful poetic language? And so this is where the argument for the Quran being divinely inspired, because there's no other way for it to have gotten here. Um, Now later, all these writings were gathered into a holy book, and we call that word the Quran. This is the word for recitation. Um, there are lots of stories in the Quran that appear in Christian and Jewish scriptures. Um, Obviously, the Quran is a divine word of God, and it's the most memorized book in the world because Muslim children learn to read by reciting from it. It contains 114 chapters called surahs, and each is divided up into smaller sections called ayahs. Now, there's also an additional collection of teachings. This is second to the Quran, called the Hadith. And now I want to bring up the concept of jihad. You can't do Islam without jihad. Now, here's what it is. Basically, guys, I fight jihad every day. and probably so do you. Jihad means the striving for God's cause. It's striving to do good. In its original meaning, it's striving against the internal struggle against temptation and wrongdoing. Every day, I fight against wanting to be lazy or to take the easy way out in things. And I have to fight against that in order to be successful as an adult and as a person. And this is jihad. This is what this is. Now, some Muslims have taken that external struggle or taken that internal struggle against evil and externalized it. And this is where some people, some of these extremists who claim to be Islamic, are not Islamic because they have abandoned what these terms have meant. And so in the Quran, we see that Muslims are taught to only fight defensively. So that's a really important concept. Now, I also want to kind of mention just a handful of things um, about the Quran. Now, I'm going to go ahead and just skim through these next few slides. Obviously, this whole this whole publisher presentation is going to be available to you if you want to get more about it, um, in Blackboard. But just a few things here. You have um, the idea that the Quran mentions the revelation of the scriptures to about other things. Okay. Uh, God says, then we had already given the family of Ibrahim, Abraham, the book and al hikmah, right, to those prophets not written in the form of a book, and conferred upon them a great kingdom. What is propping up the idea of Abraham? Down here to the Torah. Indeed, we gave the book to Musa or Moses, and to the Gospels. Then we sent after them our messengers, and we sent Isa, that's Jesus, the son of Miriam, Mary, and gave him the angel, the Gospel. So Jesus and Mary are in the Quran. To be honest, here's something that kind of is interesting, that Mary is put in such high regard in the Quran that she is mentioned more times in the Quran than she is in the Bible. Um, Also, when we deal with the head coverings of the women, this is a reference to Mary. So without Mary, they would not have had um, the shawls. Now, this was also really fascinating. And as far as brotherhood goes, this is really neat. Nearest among them in love to the believers wilt thou find those who say, we are Christians, because amongst these are men devoted to learning and men who have renounced the world, and they are not arrogant. So that is a huge shout out to Christians by the Muslims in the Quran. So, the majority of us probably have never really picked up the Quran and looked at it, and we think that there's this just great big separation, but in a way that no other religion really does. There's huge connection, a huge reach out by the Muslims in the Quran to the Christians. All right, so there are beliefs that God is the only deity, belief in angels, and I have here listed uh, quotes from the Quran and quotes from Mark, quotes from the Quran and quotes from the Bible. Some other things here that we share in common. Following names have been mentioned in both the Quran and the Bible. So, I mean, talk about similarities. Adam, Enoch, Noah, Abraham, Ishmael, Isaac, Lot, Jacob, Joseph, Job, Moses, Ezekiel, David, Solomon, Elijah, Elisha, Jonah, Zechariah, and John. This is John the Baptist. Okay. So, I mean, the significance of all of these characters are important to both religions. A belief in the hereafter and the accountability before God, you see similarities in there. Belief in prayer, that's also something that's very significant. Um, okay, belief in fasting, that's also an important piece here.